I'm Abhishek, and you're listening to Connected by mParticle, where we interview the people that help create some of the most beloved brands in the world. These folks have a unique ability to bring together seemingly unrelated people and technologies to deliver some truly amazing results. I'm so excited to introduce Miguel Navarro, digital transformation leader and patented inventor. Migs has a proven track record of helping organizations, both big and small, across a number of industries, think through, develop, and build digital experiences that consumers love. Migs takes us along a journey of how his childhood in the Philippines shaped his love for technology and ultimately led to his passion for digital and CX. We talk through how organizations can spot and adopt new and emerging platforms to create connected experiences that drive more meaningful customer outcomes. Miguel, thank you so much for making the time on a Monday afternoon to talk to me. So I'll ask you, to introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about yourself. But then, listen, let's just keep talking and see where the conversation goes.
Absolutely. So my name is Miguel Navarro, and to tell you the truth, I've just kind of been all over the place, occupationally, right? Like it's just one of those things. But if we're highlighting achievements, right? Like I've ran different platforms for different organizations. I definitely try to stay on the mobile slash innovative side of things, and plus other emerging platforms that are out there. I've, I'm a patented inventor. That's something that, I'm absolutely something that I'm very proud of, right? Only because it's one thing to have an idea, but to actually really follow through and, put it out there and be absolutely judged by everyone telling you your idea is not good enough and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, that's one of the reasons why I'm proud of it is because I've made plenty of mistakes there, right? So yeah, I mean, like cutting it short, guy who runs different digital platforms and inventor.
That's a huge understatement. The patented inventor thing's interesting. I definitely want to get into that. But and we'll get into Migs because I always call you Migs. I know your name's Miguel.
Oh, okay.
But Migs, like on that note, right? So, you've been in digital, you touch customer experience, you touch mobile, you touch some of these, other platforms, but taking a step back, how did you get into this crazy world of tech and data? Like take us back to the early days. I feel like everyone's got a pretty interesting story on how
Oh,
they
wow.
got into this.
Yeah, so very, very early days, right? Again, like without really putting like how dated I am, right? Way back in the day, like it was really my older brother, right? Really the eldest sibling that I have. His name's Ramon. He was the one who really got me into programming, right? And how it all started was, really, again, like I come from a very like humble beginning, like in Philippines, right? So that we definitely had like a ton of other neighbors that have the Nintendo system in Philippines. We call it family computer. That's how like the Nintendo was, and you blew through those cartridges, and anyway. Um, my parents worked really hard, right? But one of the things that typically happens when you're a kid is like you see other kids having more things. So my brother, Ramon, one of the things that he taught me at a very early age is, oh, if you can't buy it, build it, right? So one of the things that we did was, I think my dad brought home a computer from his office that was like, old. It was like something that's used, like a 386 like computer. It was like old, right?
Okay.
So my brother taught me my first programming language, which is Turbo Pascal. So again, dating myself way back here. So it wasn't object-oriented programming. It was like I'm talking about like hardcore, like it's old style programming. And we made our first game together, right? Like my brother was there helping me, guiding me through the whole thing. And that kind of blew my mind. The fact that I can type things into something and then all of a sudden digitally create something, right? That now someone is enjoying, AKA my friends. That absolutely blew my mind. And I would say that was
Mm.
when like the spark, really ignited. So from there, I essentially like, so my brother at this point was in college. I was in the sixth grade, and I just continued programming. So all the way up to again, like different languages, right? We're talking like Turbo Pascal. We went to like Visual Basic. We went through like all of these like different Fortran, like all of these like different languages. And one of the things that ended up happening was I got fairly good at it. That I was breezing through any computer classes that I had in grammar school and high school. As a matter of fact, they even had like a student teacher kind of like switcheroo program. I'm
Mhm.
always picked as the computer teacher, right? Because it's just one of those things where, I did excel at it. Anyway, long story short, one of the with that as my beginning, it really taught me a lot of things, right? Which is one, it didn't really matter what the language was. As long as you had a goal, right? As long as you knew what you were like, where you wanted to go, it's possible, right? So in
Mm.
life, like that's kind of how I look through everything as well. Is that as long as I knew where I needed to go, now it's just a matter of figuring out what the syntax is, figuring out how to create a method. How do I keep calling that method? So that kind of became ingrained in me. And the way that I kind of looked at it was I just needed to always, I didn't have to be the best. I just needed to be good, and so I definitely tried out so many different programming languages. And one of the things that ended up happening was Steve Jobs in 2007 announced, hey, like, we're going to allow third-party developers. And that's when, I kind of dropped everything, right? I dropped everything.
Wow.
I think most of my friends have not heard from me, right? From like 2007 to like maybe like 2012. I just disappeared, like, because I needed to be really good in mobile programming. And yeah, like, so from there, built my first app, right? And one of like the things that ended up happening from there was, I started really understanding not the app creation process. And this is where things start becoming interesting, because I feel like this is where it pivoted for me, was that it's not about building the app anymore, it's about monetizing.
Mm.
So when the switch happened, of being able to not only create, but then looking at the monetization of, again, like that one app where it's a giant red button and you just keep pressing it,
I remember that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
right. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that's
That's
the
right.
first app that, like one of the first few apps that ever came out, to like now. I mean, we're talking about an Amazon app where, or a banking application or shopping application, right? When like with Macy's, that brick and mortar turning digital. That's Those are like the type of things that now, if you look at the drastic change from 2000 to today, um, yeah, it's the reason why I continue doing all these digital stuff, right? So anyway, I know I kind of stretched out, like going from where I came from to where I want to go. It's just yeah.
No, Migs. No, no, no. I think so much of what's interesting is like what, for some people it's maybe a slow and gradual, like I saw that this opportunity that wasn't available before is, right? But that's so interesting that for you, it really started in your childhood days. And it was that
Oh,
like passion
absolutely.
for, right, like building programs and seeing that you could put stuff in a keyboard.
Absolutely, yeah. And to me, it was kind of like the fun factor of it, because building it, right? To me, when I was building anything, right, programmatically, I always looked at it as almost like a game, right? Like
Right.
there is a problem to be solved, and it's just a puzzle, and you do trial and error until you get the outcome that you want.
So like that's one part, right? But then the fact that like now we're thinking about 2007, what about like the iPhone coming out or mobile made you drop everything and go all in on that?
Oh, absolutely. So that's a very good question, Abby. One of like the things that I kind of like looked at, right, is um if you so way back in the Philippines, the way that we used to do phone calls before was that we did not have a phone at home. Even though, like, when I grew up, eventually, like, most people didn't have phones. When I was growing up, we had a phone like in our home, but most people in the Philippines like would go to a store, right? A store that someone owned. It's not like a major store. It's like a store that is like built around someone's house, and they would go up there and pay someone like a quarter or anything like that to be able to use their phone. And then it went from, oh, like everyone had like phones in their homes, right? And then the world of cell phone happened, where all of a sudden some people had cell phones, not all, right? And then everyone started having cell phones. So I'm calling out the Nokia brand, where it's just like, the most popular cell phone ever, and the only game that ever existed, right, was Snake. So
Right.
going from like that point where I knew everyone had a cell phone and the only game was Snake, and how popular Snake was, at least like for me in grammar school and high school, it was just like a super popular game. And then going and understanding why Palm Pilot, Pocket PC failed, and because of like the missing infrastructure of free Wi-Fi for all, the speed of internet, the speed of like the bandwidth that we're getting as far as cellular coverage, it's just not the same today from when like Pocket PCs and Palm Pilots were there. So it's almost like, imagine if you had a phone that is not connected to the internet. It's useless. Sure, you have an awesome camera, but it's
Right.
useless. So
Right.
that's what
Right.
I mean. So it's like when when I saw like 2007 iPhone, the rise of internet, right, and everything else, it's just kind of like you're looking almost for a catalyst that typically happens. So in most major companies, right, there's always a catalyst. Like Coca-Cola had World War I. Um, Netflix and Blockbuster, they had the internet, right? The internet like kind of like changed things. So when that happened, I definitely looked at smartphones that way as well. Sure, it kind of looks, smells, feels like a pocket PC, but there's juice there, right? Because there's internet and now it's connected to everything. And then from there, the way I'm looking at it is, wait a second, you're carrying this thing around all the time, right? Where in a PC you leave at home, a laptop you'd have to boot up, even if you were like at a train. And who would boot up a laptop in the train? Yeah, it's just like I personally wouldn't do that. It's just, to me, it's like it's bulky. But being able to pull
Sure.
out the phone, right, and I think at that point I owned the iPhone for about like a few months then.
Hmm.
When they announced third-party developers, I absolutely compared it to the .com of like in the 90s, right? And I knew that that would be the .com of our time, and definitely wanted to monetize on it.
That's hindsight's 2020, right? Like I think it's easy for me to read like all the HBR articles and be like, oh yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. But I think for our listeners, right, to be at that point in time to kind of like see the potential in this. And then of course, right, and we'll get into this, but looking at how pivotal, like, I mean, I don't think there's too many business to consumer brands today that at some point very early in their growth don't seriously consider having a digital presence, but then as part of that, having a significant mobile presence. And then, um, okay, so then Migs, I guess pivoting over because I don't want to. I think everyone understands and gets the power of mobile, right? Like everyone's developing a mobile app, everyone's thinking about monetization, but sort of like trying to recreate the 2007 of 2021, because I know you're not just a mobile guy. One of the things I want to talk to you about are voice platforms. Like to me, they're still very tactical, like, hey, Alexa, tell me what time it is or set my alarm. I still feel like the voice and voice as a touch point, as an engagement point, is still relatively nascent, at least for a lot of brands and a lot of organizations. Can you talk a little bit more about what you see the potential of that platform is? And how are you seeing organizations leverage it, and what role do you see voice playing in an organization's customer engagement strategy?
Absolutely. So the way that I kind of look at, yeah, and again, like you're spot on, Abby. I do believe that in the voice world, right? Let's just say that because I don't want to encapsulate it in a device, because there's so many different methods that you can utilize your voice into creating activation or, like again, like kind of like creating that like digital experience. But the way that I'm kind of looking at it right now is it's almost, I do feel that most companies are reactive. And I'll use the analogy of plants, right? So imagine you have like your digital platforms are potted plants. And how companies typically react to it is the more people look at that plant, the more water that plant gets, right? So the way that I look at the voice platform today is that it's the same plan as mobile. And, at least for right now, because I'm probably not educated well enough to understand the difference between, I don't know, like the thing that comes to mind is like hemp and cannabis, right? Like, so, there's like definitely like a difference there, but, they both look the same. So the one
Mm.
piece that, I would say is to me, in my uneducated eyes today, like they both look the same, that it's just that mobile gets a lot of eyes, right? So what ends up happening is the planner, Waters, aka the company, right? Because they're all reactive. They look at the data. Oh my God, we have a lot of these mobile users, so we're going to continue feeding mobile until the users end up looking elsewhere, right? Now, I don't expect that there's going to be this crazy shift, right, that happens between mobile or voice, or, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's another potted plant that I'm not looking at, right? Like, so
Sure.
the idea here is that I do believe that voice, um, you know, it, as of today, I think it's a great accompaniment for mobile because mobile, like you take everywhere, right? That's kind of like the definition of mobile. Like it's just like, it's just, you take it everywhere with you. But I do believe that eventually voice, right, will be everywhere. Because if you think about the Alexa systems today, Google Home, etc., those are the red button games. Like that's
Mm.
the initial piece of it. Like we haven't thought of absolutely how to create immediate monetization, because right now we're trying to make these devices look and feel like the pocket PC and mobile devices that we have today. Though it's shifting now, because now like you have the hearables, right? Which now like you'll start seeing if you have AirPods, Siri starting to dictate things to you, and it's waiting for you to reply back. If you have Microsoft Outlook, one of the things that it'll tell you is, it'll give you a recap of your emails while identifying how many emails you have and how long that recap would probably be. So
Mm.
those are kind of like the pieces where right now it's a good attachment, right, to the mobile device. But then I do believe that eventually, your chips and, like space and all of that become a little bit more different from where we are today. That I do believe that my, like eventually my light switches, my doorknobs, even though now we have digital doorknobs, but it's only able to accept commands that we do today, not the future stuff yet, but just the stuff that we can do today, which is switch on, switch off. And when you and I do believe that right now, especially, a lot of companies are being conservative because they do understand that, it's not just them that have to adopt, they have to figure out the trajectory of the engagement and usage, right, of their customers to be able to determine that. And if it is something way too different, right, like, so if today you started introducing flying cars, like I
Mhm.
guarantee you, there's probably not going to be a lot of people buying that, right?
Right.
But if you started off with a car that is self-driving, right, and then eventually it goes to, there's like that barely touches the ground, right, where it's just a floating car, will never leave the ground but it's not touching the ground, and then eventually scale that up to, it's flying. It's easier to chew and manage versus going from a car or going from a bicycle to like a flying car, right? Like, so
Right.
I do believe that there's that piece when it comes to customer adoption in technology. So that's the reason why this plant, this voice plant, right? It's not as big as mobile right now, but I do believe that it definitely has the characteristics of it being as or maybe bigger than mobile because again, the one thing, the one device, right, that you will have to take with you and you will never have to charge or anything like that really is your voice.
No doubt.
And if you think about how many times in your life you use your voice to get what you want, like whether you want to order a cup of coffee at the drive-through, you're looking for your remote, you're asking your significant other, hey, like where's the remote? Like you use it all the time to create commands and with expected outcome. And I do believe that that is going to be the step. It's just a matter of really having more and more companies invest in it
Right.
for it to be, bigger. But I mean, I'm telling you right now, like we're definitely getting a lot closer there, right? Just if you look at CarPlay, if you had, yeah, just like what I mentioned, if you had AirPods and just like where things are going, it's
Sure.
definitely becoming a bit different.
It's so interesting that you say that, right? Because to your point about, going from a bicycle to a plane, it's not just you, the inventor. And in this analogy, maybe that's a single company that wants to leverage voice. It's that it sort of takes that whole ecosystem collectively being built. There has to be more platforms, easier access, more upskilling and training, right? I mean, we're probably going to see like whole programming languages dedicated in, whatever the predominant voice language is. The plan analogy makes a lot of sense, right? Because now we're just like, it's like, hey, there's nothing really about sort of the plant or the voice that makes it potentially any less upside or any less likely to be adopted as widely in society as mobile is. And in fact, for some of the reasons you provided, voice probably has the advantage in that it's sort of part of you, right? There's no physical device that you can leave behind.
One piece that I would add there, right, and just talking about potted plant and all of that. And the reason why I use that analogy is because that's how systems were built before, right? Like, I mean, like we're talking about silos here, so like kind of like the potted plant. But
Right.
really, like as organizations and companies, you have to realize that all your plants really should be connected,
Right.
right? And what you should be doing is eliminating those plants, but rather instead of watering a pot, you should be watering your soil, right?
Right.
And that's kind of like the
Mm,
piece that and you need to fertilize it. You need to take care of your soil down to the point, right, that anytime you put in an additional plant or platform, right, it will grow because your soil is solid. And I'm talking about like connected data, right? Like imagine, like and think about it like in the workspace or work world, right, where you have a brand new employee and your boss gives that brand new employee a task that you a veteran can already do today. Gives this brand new employee, doesn't know like the system, et cetera, all the knowledge, all the folks, all the people that you talk to, you have coffee with, you have lunch with, you have dinner with, like he doesn't know any of that. That person will have to work about 3-5 times as hard, right, to be able to get
right.
the same result that you would. Now imagine a world where whatever it is that as a veteran, gets immediately transferred. Like I'm not in real time. I'm not talking like in days, in months, in real time. That your knowledge and your existence gets transferred to that brand new employee. Imagine like having a platform where it can inherit all the data that the desktop platform has already created. Imagine a voice platform, right? That it's completely brand new, not really used by people, right? But when people shift to voice, all of a sudden it feels so natural, not because, oh, I
Right.
have to reintroduce myself again, but because, oh, all the existing data that you had, one, you didn't spend a lot of money for because you've been planning and making sure your soil is healthy versus, oh, I'm looking at one potted plant and making sure that that one potted plant looks great, but rather looking at the bigger picture of, let's make sure that we take care of the soil. So anytime we plant anything, it just grows just as big as everything else.
No, and listen, that segues, really nicely into another topic there, Migs, because you're right. Like at the end of the day, it's not about forcing voice or for that matter, like any new platform into a customer engagement strategy. It's like what organically makes the most sense. I mean, there's going to be things that are just inherently easier to do on a laptop, right? And we
Absolutely.
should engage our customers on that,
Absolutely.
right? On that touch point on a laptop because it makes the most
And
sense.
it should be the customer's choice, right? If they choose to
Right.
engage, like using the laptop or a light switch, let's make it work, right? I mean, like that's kind of like the piece here is that the days where a customer has to go to the business, it's slowly disappearing, right? Like now customers expect you to come to them, not in the form of ads, because that's a totally different topic, but
Sure.
being there when you need it, like you want your company to be that very good friend that you don't need to be seen crying for that person to go and ask you, hey, is everything okay? No, man, like that person like texts you like before you even start feeling down, this person texts you, hey man, like it's been a long week, I think you really need a drink, or just making sure that you're okay, and proactively, not reactively, like, and those type of, and if you think about it, right, how do you know as a friend that your friend is suffering? Hey, maybe they text you every day and then they haven't texted you in 2 days.
Right.
Like what are your data points as a friend, right? It's oh, like this kid typically jokes around for some reason. When I said hey, just said hey, like sorry, can't really talk right now. And you've got so many different points of indicator. Not trying to be creepy as a company, right? You want to look at those points of indicator just the same as like a sword, right? It could be used for good or evil.
Of
You know,
course. Sure.
but the thing that I do try to push folks and companies to do is do right by their customers by using their data, not to just collect it and hoard it, right, and not use it, but make sure that that you're thinking about your data contextually down to the point of customer experience. Because it's not about collecting as much data as I can so I can sell you something. It's collecting as much data as I can so I know I can be there for you when you need me. You
Right.
know,
With the right context and
so
information and things that I'm genuinely helpful.
absolutely, because
Right.
the thing is like if you're a company and you're like thinking, oh, like I'm not going to, invest in avocados, right? Because internally I just believe avocados is out of season and they're not going to do it. But if that's your data point that people are ordering avocados or anything like, or any drink or food that involves avocado, you would know exactly that. Hey, I need more avocados because I need to feed my friend, right? So that's kind of like the piece that the way I kind of look at data is that one, how fast can you ingest it, right? Like, so it's almost
Mm,
like when I add that new platform, is there an onboarding process? Because if you tell me yes, right, like data or we're gonna have to like siphon data, it's just like, okay, what's that gonna take? Like 3 months, 6 months. By that time, people are no longer using it, right? It's just like they've
right.
tried it like 2 times and then no longer going back to it. So what's the point, right? So to me, if you're going to run a test and learn environment, like I think that you got to give it like the right tools for it to properly be a true test and learn. Because if the data is incomplete that you're feeding your platform, and then bring down the mallet and say, okay, I'm judging this platform that it's not working because you gave it a absolutely unfair disadvantage, then that's on you. And that's the reason why I do love CDPs, why I love mParticle, right? It's the fact that again, like it's one of those systems that, and again, I've worked in like so many different places, right? And this is like a
Yep.
very, very shameless plug for mParticle, so shame on you guys. But one of the things that I definitely do love about it is the true essence, right, of real time. We're not talking like real time, give it to the customer, and then what, it's up to you to figure it out, right? Like it's absolute real time. I plug in my platform, and within seconds, that platform gets and be able to use that data that existed before from other platforms, use it to be able to feed that platform. So the same thing is like the plant analogy that I have. That plant flourishes just like the others. The
Yep.
same thing as the employee conversation. Like by day one, there's no onboarding process. By day one, this guy is ready to grind work like hobby. Right? Like it's just
Right. Well, oh, no, I mean, Migs, there is so much goodness here. And honestly, I'm putting a bookmark in this. You're probably going to have to be invited on for a part 2 and part 3. Like there's a lot just in what you said over the last 5 minutes that deserve their own episode. And this is what segues into another question I've been dying to ask you, which is, I think we're both in agreement here, but so much of your ability to serve your customers as an organization in today's world is your ability to connect data and technology in these ways that you're really listening to your customer and you're able to engage them when and where they want to be engaged. But I want to double click into that. You've worked across a number of different industries, and organizations of all sizes, but I'll ask you this maybe a little more specifically for financial services, or maybe more generally organizations that have traditionally come from like a strong brick and mortar presence, right? What are some of the maybe opportunities and challenges that you would highlight and caution as these organizations are taking this journey from, brick and mortar going into digital?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Abby, I think this is a very important question, and thanks for that. A lot of people think, oh, like, especially for a guy like me, who's like, very digital. A lot of people think, oh, a person who's like digital would only stay within digital or anything like that. But no, like I absolutely believe in the brick and mortar model. It's just that it's going to need to adopt. Like the thing is like there's a reason why there's Apple stores opening, right? And there's a reason why all of a sudden Amazon is investing in more and more brick and mortar places. And if you think of their growth, right, it's just really the opposite, right? You're coming from like the same candle just being lit on both ends. It's just they're from a very digital place that's now understanding the brick and mortar model, that they're understanding the homogeny of physical and digital. We're in a lot of brick and mortar places are chasing like the shiny object of digital, right? So they're like, no, screw the brick and mortar models and all of that. And no, like I honestly believe in both. I believe that there are certain services and functions that a brick and mortar place, like, and we're talking about financial services. I mean, like a safety deposit box, right? I
Sure.
mean, like there's probably not a lot of people that do safety deposit box, but just like the laptop analogy that we did earlier, it's like there are some people that want to use a laptop. If you have customers, right, that say, hey, I want to be able to use a safety deposit box, and you have to like go back to them, right, and tell them, hey, like based on my Excel sheet, it doesn't really make sense. Like, do you think they'll understand it? They'll be happy? No, because at the end of the day, they didn't get what they wanted, which was a safety deposit box.
Sure.
So that's honestly a one product, right, that will exist in a brick and mortar place. And there's something that they will feel accessible because it's somewhat close to them, because you would imagine someone would rent a brick and mortar or a storage just the things with storage facility, someone would rent one that's close to them. So and this is kind of like the piece that the way I'm looking at it is that people can't compare that apples to apples, which most companies do. And that's why this is kind of like a nice little warning for people, right? Is that you don't have two right shoes. You don't have two left shoes. You have a right and left shoe, right? Like one side of you is dominant, but it doesn't mean that you don't need the other. So that's how I would look at digital and brick and mortar. Depending on your industry and your business, sometimes your brick and mortar is the dominant one and the digital is supporting, right? Now, if that is what works for your business for the time being, because things change, right? And you need to be able to adopt those changes as fast as you can, right? But when you don't, right, when you decide to cut off that one leg, which again, like a lot of people use this story, this like cautionary tale of Blockbuster, where they already had like the digital model and decided to cut that leg off. I mean, the only thing that's left is for you to trip and fall, right? So that's essentially what happens is if you not listen to, again, like where like the customers are, et cetera, and just decide like, oh, this is where you want to force your customer into. Because back in the day when there was just only like one brand of PC being sold, one type of printer, there's only one major operating system running. Yeah, sure, customers didn't have a choice because they would have to pick you. But that's not today's world. today's world is
Mm,
full of like companies and startups coming, like from like left field every day, and they come up with these like innovative items and these products and services that a lot of these major companies that are huge, right? That it takes them time to pivot. These startups are the ones that move quick and get to the customer's need immediately, right?
mm.
And so for bigger companies that's looking at brick and mortar or digital, you should really look at and. Like you should look more into, okay, how do I use my brick and mortar, my assets, right? How do I use all my assets the full potential way?
I love, like, I think the point that you made there is so apt, right? And yeah, I mean, the tactics of how you do this are going to vary by industry and where you are as an individual company, but it's sort of, it doesn't matter where you started. It's like you still got to ask the same questions, which are like, how have the needs of my customer changed? And like, what do I need to layer on to the assets I have to make that the best it could be? And it doesn't
Yeah.
matter if you start in digital, and to your point, you're opening up, a bunch of grocery stores, or in Amazon's case, acquiring a bunch of grocery stores, like that's still connected to their digital experience.
Absolutely. And that's the most important thing is the connected
Right.
experience part of it, right? Because the thing is, if I go to a brick and mortar store and I've already been in digital, I've experienced that, oh, this thing, the suggestions, everything is like flowing the correct way. And then I go to a store. And just like what I said, we don't have customers today that are patient, understanding. No, no, like our customers are finicky and they're not happy like with one
Well,
thing.
well, and they have a choice. Like
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
other big part
That's
of
what I
this.
mean.
Yeah.
It's like they
Yeah.
have like a world of choices. So the one piece that I do tell folks is you got to make sure that your whatever platform or channel that you're creating, that it is as good as the as its predecessor, or the one before it, or the one with it, right? I don't want to say before it because it's not like, oh, because we are in mobile today, the desktop is dead. It's not.
Right.
There's so many different applications within desktop today that it's so like tip of the iceberg that people haven't really, and maybe that's another episode that we can go to. But again, through connected experiences, those things change.
Right. I mean, this takes a real evaluation and a real it's a two-way street, right? You put stuff out there as a business, but you also got to listen to how your consumers react to that. Staying on the theme of connectivity for one more question, we've talked a lot about data and technology, but can you speak to the value of working with people, partners, teams outside of like your core function to drive better outcomes?
Oh, absolutely. So the one piece that I always think in my head is that I don't know everything, right? Sure, I've had like a lot of experiences, but the past, doesn't really quite dictate what the future is. So those are two completely different entities. And the way that I kind of look at it is the same thing with dealing with either something innovative or something BAU, right? I definitely look at my peers as, folks who know what they're doing. I definitely give them that respect. And just like what I mentioned earlier, I definitely walk into a room believing that I don't know everything. So I make sure that even, like my opinions, right, when someone says something, let's say a statement of, oh, I don't like digital. I don't barge in there and start shooting from my hip and then start defending digital, right? No, I take a breather, right? I take a pause and ask, the question and make sure that I hear this person out. Why? Because those are the reason why that person does not like digital is because of something I don't know who is a person who loves digital, so I definitely look at it that way. So anytime there's any ideas that come across a project that I do, and it may be something that I don't understand, I'm not quick to say no to it, whether I'm the decision maker or not, right? It's one of those things that I do feel it's extremely important to one, respect your partners and peers, no matter what level they are, because again, like at some point, right? Like I was, like again, like my first job, Adi, is like constructing spiral notebooks in Philippines, where I got paid like maybe like less than a penny, right, for stacking up a pile of notebooks that's about like 30 centimeters or like well, like a foot
Yeah.
tall.
Wow.
So again, like to me, the way I'm looking at it is like everyone comes from like different backgrounds. So you always want to make sure that you treat your partners right. But also, to tell you the truth, none of my accomplishments would have, I'm nothing, right? I'm nothing without my partners. Like,
Yeah.
my partners are the ones that, are able to pull strings on their end to make stuff happen. The way I'm looking at it is I'm just that guy who's like great at the huddle, right? And it's just like able to like tell people like, hey, like I think we should do this. Hey, can you do this? Hey, are you good at that? And then try to like understand the strength and improvements that the team or my partners do or can do, and utilize it. So yeah, the way I'm like looking at it, I'm just a guy who's really good in equations.
Right.
And but the numbers, the decimal figures, and everything else, that's all my partners. Like I'm nothing. I'm just that guy who puts everything together.
Right. Right. Yeah. Like we always, in the world I work in and the ecosystem media, like it's so easy to talk about, here's this machine learning model, and here's this, and here's this, and here's all the things that this one company did that I read an article about. But so much of what I see is the real progress. It's not that the technology isn't there, right? It's not that theoretically you could put this stuff together. I think the folks that do it best sort of have that ability, I think, to know what they're good at, know what they're not, and then bring the right people in the room together.
You know what, Abby, like I really love the fact that you're hammering on like people, right? So one of like the things that is important to me, right, when it comes to and this is definitely my criteria when I'm judging partners or third party platforms that I want to partner with or anything like that. I definitely look at the people. Right? Like I look at how the CEO treats their people. I want to see like how the managers treat their people. One of the things I typically do is I sit in maybe like, a couple of times like in the office, say I'm going to work there and all of that, and I try to like sniff out the environment, right? Whether,
Mm.
and I'm not talking about like short term hoorahs, like oh we're buying like Tuesday tacos or like something like. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about folks in there and how they speak to each other, how they support each other, like, and more importantly, when people make mistakes, right? Because it's very easy to behave or very easy to be a nice person when the only expectation is for you to be a nice person because everyone's having a good day. We're celebrating right now. It's a party. There's nothing to be sad about. I'm
Mm.
talking about people are still laughing after like they find out that they have like massive losses, right? Because now they're like, their leader is standing there and saying, hey, it's like it happens to the best of us. And I know that everyone still worked hard and not out there yelling or cursing out their people, right? So to me, it's one of like the like technology and whatever platforms are. If you're a company right now listening and you're looking for a like again like a company to partner with, don't focus too much on their product, right? Like whether like oh they have like the best AI model, blah 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 blah. Talking about like a short period of time in your lifetime that then that will be overtaken by like someone else. Like again, like if you're basing it off a product, name one product right now that you're still using today after like 8 years, right? I mean, my TV has changed after like 3, 4 years. My phone has changed in like two. So it's like, no, if you're basing it off a product, eventually that's going to disappear. Base it on people because the people, right, that run that product is actually what changes the product. It's what improves the product. Those are the people listening to your customers' needs, etc. So if your partners, right, the people you partner with, don't internalize like what you believe in morally, right, or like the ideas that you have might not be a good fit for you. But again, like for me, all my partners, all the folks that I've, again, like all the third party platforms that I hang out with, and obviously a customer of theirs, one of the things I looked at are the people. Like I absolutely judge them at their worst. And if they look the best at their worst, I mean, hey, that's a partner for me.
Wow. 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 That is yeah, a lot of people don't think about it that way. That is so key. And you're right. I don't think there's anything I own that, is the best anymore 10 years after the fact or even 5 years
Yeah.
after the fact. All right, Migs. Thank you. I know we're way over the time I said we had for this thing, but if you will, I had two more sort of fun I got to ask you as a person, right? Not as a professional question. What is your favorite brand or experience and why?
My favorite brand and experience. Wow, like they're definitely taking it deep there. So honestly, for me, I'm a huge fantasy football guy. So to me, I always like any any app that kind of deals with fantasy football or any like DFS type system. But the to me, and I don't know what it is. Like I really do enjoy like the Yahoo fantasy app,
Oh, sure.
and and again, like we're talking Yahoo, right? But the one piece that I would say why I do enjoy it is because after using it, it makes me feel just as smart as the commentators in like football, etc. Because like to me, the way that they educate their customers, which is primarily the folks like me, to feel empowered, right, with the correct information and making us believe that we're experts in the game. The whole information download thing and them showing like videos and all, I just thought it was I think it's a pretty awesome customer experience.
All right. So, all right, Migs, I'm not going to keep you too long. The next, I'm going to ask you. So, I got 5 questions for you. They're all rapid fire. So, they should be, relatively, should be either or for the most part. So, all right, I'm just going to dive into it. So, I got to know pineapple on pizza.
Pineapple
Yes or
on
no?
Oh my God, yeah. So let me tell you something. Like Shakey's in Philippines has this pizza, and it's called I think Hawaiian Special or Hawaiian Delight. I forget what it is, but it's pineapple on pizza.
Okay. All right. So that's a resounding yes. This is good. So I'll tell you right now, and I don't know if we'll keep this in the episode. We're 2-1, so 2 yeses and 1 no on this question so far.
Wow.
So yeah, we're pineapple seems to be winning right now. Okay. Winter or summer sports?
So I would say, see, like, and it depends. If I'm playing in it, summer. If I'm watching it, winter.
Okay. All right. Um, all right. LeBron or MJ?
Oh, MJ all the way, man. Like again, like to me, again, like I grew up, watching basketball in the '90s,
Yep.
and the game has changed. Like the game today has changed, and it's become a lot more statistical. Wherein before, the game was the game. Like I'm talking about, and again, I'm a Seattle SuperSonics fan. Like, I mean, I love Sean Kemp, right? Like he
I
is
see.
the
Yep.
dude. So again, I'm talking, like back in the day when slam dunk contests were like a thing. And I don't know, maybe I'm like a little bit more disconnected now, but back in the day, like slam dunk contests, I mean, you're talking about Dominic Wilkins like doing that like one-handed windmill, like slamming that in, and Michael Jordan jumping from like the free throw line, like dunking that. I mean, come on. So
Right.
to me, it's
Right.
just like it's just a different KPI. That's how I would like look at it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's no shots at LeBron. He's a great player. I think we all
Yeah,
agree. But
I'm not saying he's not a
listen,
good player,
yeah,
but it's just a different KPI.
different KPI. I got you. MJ all the way. So, all right. We got 2 more here. Frozen yogurt or ice cream?
Ooh, so I would say frozen yogurt, right? Like, and the reason why is because I mean, I'm just like kind of attached to it because that's kind of like how my wife and I built our relationship. So it's just there's the emotion
Wow.
to it, you know?
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we're gonna start. When we have you back, that's gonna be the start of part 2. Is how you and your wife met over froyo. Easy choice then. No faults there. And then Migs, I gotta ask you because I'm a huge foodie and voracious eater. I'd probably put that as my top skill on my resume. But favorite restaurant in New Jersey or New York?
Ooh, favorite restaurant in New Jersey, New York. So again, I'm going to be a little bit biased, right? Because my first move from the Philippines to the U.S. was Jersey City, right? So to me, Jersey City is always, like home to me as far as, like the US goes. There's this one restaurant that's on Harborside Financial Center, and it's called Porto Ligero. So one of the things that they had on the menu a long time ago, but they still make for me, even though it's no longer on the menu, is that wild mushroom risotto. Now, I want you to go there, try that out, and tell me that's not the best wild mushroom risotto you've ever had.
Porto. Okay, everyone listening, you heard it here first, right? We got a secret. We got a secret menu item. Porto Ligero. That's not too far away from me. So, all right,
No,
Migs. Listen. It's a date. All right. We got to meet
absolutely.
up. We got to get the mushroom risotto there. Man, I think that's a wrap. This was awesome. Geez, my head's still spinning. I want to ask you 50 other questions, but I think for the sake of, I think that we gave the audience enough for for this episode.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like, I'll take you up on the next episode, man. To me, listen, if this is my excuse of hanging out with the Abby, come on, man. Like, I'll take it any day.
You're too kind, Migs. You're awesome in more ways than you'll know, and for sure, thank you so much for being a guest on the pod.
You have it backwards, man. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this conversation from Connected by mParticle. For more on this episode, you can check out the show notes and transcript on our blog. You can also subscribe to the podcast on any major podcast player. If building great customer experiences is important to you, sign up for our monthly newsletter, mPulse, which includes a very short list of the best blog articles, use cases, and industry reads from throughout the month. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.